Commander Syken, call signs alive. Earth holds its breath under dead steel skies.
Hello and welcome back to another run of XCOM2. My name is Syken and this is the recruitment trailer for our newest campaign. And I want you to pay close attention to the content of such. As always, Advent was not defeated for good. They're coming back and they're striking even harder than before. Today's run is called Requiem, the last day. And Requiem really is an homage to the mods of the Legion of Requiem, a significant improvement in terms of difficulty towards even legendary difficulty. But I wouldn't be the Sultan of XCOM if I wouldn't take it one step further. So, without further ado, let's jump into an overview of all of the mods and difficulties that I came up with to make this Requiem run a living hell. So, what does Requiem, the last hour, really mean? Requiem is a homage towards the Requiem mods created by Reshi that all focus around making the game really difficult. And I'm going to go through all of the mods overall. I created a mod collection for you. I will link the mod collection right down in the doobly-doo so that you can have a look yourself, and if you want to subscribe to all of them and do a play along, that is fine. Overall, we're rocking 70 mods in this one. I was trying to find a good middle ground between not over modding it and at the same time getting a functional but really difficult run together. The core idea of the run is that we're going to make Advent really dangerous on the one hand and make it a very difficult run as the baseline, and on top of that bring the feature of sabotage and AI interaction back from the last run, but refine that a little bit more, so much so that in this run it comes through a little bit more fluently. Let's see what that means in detail. And we're doing that by looking at the mods. I would generally categorize the type of mods into mods that add enemies, which we're covering right now, then mods that change the base gun, which we're going to cover right afterwards, and then finally a couple of quality of life and display mods. So let's move right into the mods that add enemies, and front and center of that is the Requiem for Man, Requiem Legion. This is a categorization of additional enemies. Quite a few of them actually can spawn. It's over 70 enemies that have been streamlined into one set of mods. All of them have these purple-esque features, and all of them are just way stronger than normal. From the same vein, we're looking at the Reshi's Requiem collection, where I have a couple of mods included, such as a Harder War Advanced Aliens, which adds a ton of new mutants, mutant valities, mutant ballistari, Andromedon dreadnoughts, and cryo keepers, to say a few. You can see the awesome artwork there. Very much underutilized species, so I appreciate that we get a few more of them. On top of them, the Requiem mod itself offers a couple of gameplay mutators, and we're going to see that in the campaign. Whilst not initially additional enemies, they offer quite a few improvements for enemies. So a few side trips where the enemy, for instance, uses rooftops or has higher cover or is using fog to their advantage. Tons of additional dark events and dark event chains, as well as additional second wave options that we're going to use. So a very, very difficult but equally fun mod to use. Then we shouldn't forget about the basic units, the Praetorians. These are essentially improved Advent enemies, some of which just have better armor, some of which can have way more mobility, but they do not only come as Praetorians, they also come as harder enemies, such as the dreaded Praetorian sectopods that are kind of the top of the food chain there. On top of that, we're of course getting something for the efforts, which is called the Requiem Armory. That is essentially all of the research that you can that can be done for the new enemies that we are going to encounter, and with that, of course, all of the items that would come along. Moving on, Requiem doesn't end there. Requiem also makes the strongholds more difficult, more entwined, larger, more enemies, more drain of resources before you even meet the maker, and then the fights themselves are also harder. I couldn't pass on to the opportunity to make the Chosen into really troublesome machines. And speaking of which, we are of course going to use a better Advent, not so much to push the Requiem Legion away, but Requiem more focuses on the mid and the end game, whilst the better Advent tries to do its best to be relevant across all stages, primarily across the early game. So there will be many variants of Advent there. There are a couple of Lost variants. There are a couple of Chrysalid variants, a couple of basically all of the variants, as well as the dreaded Sectopod Prime with the Prime reactions. So we're going to have a lot of fun with those creatures. Also, the Prime characters will give us a hard time, which allows us to, or forces us actually, to use Frost as well as Stun more often. Speaking of Frost, we're adding 2 more rulers to the scene. One is another snake, the Snake King. This time, Children of the King 2.0, which is a Frost-themed pack around another alien ruler, just to make it a little bit more difficult. And the world wouldn't be complete without a Spark ruler and all of the other Sparks together. Now that already sounds terrifying, I would agree, but we're not even done. We're putting another faction to the mix, one that is predominantly focusing on us and not on Advent. That's how I configured it. And that faction will be none other than the Dark Elders. I will in the future do a full 40k run because I am just falling more and more in love with the idea of that. But the Dark Elders themselves, we had them in the Royal Rumble situation, and I very much appreciated their presence. They are high mobility, they are high evasion, which makes it difficult to get rid of them. They are on top of that using poison. They have very strong attacks, they are fast. So they are, in a nutshell, all of the things that are just incredibly ugly to fight against, and we're going to encounter all of that firsthand. Well, the world would also not be complete without a revamp of the Losts. So this time I went above and beyond to make it so much so that the Losts are no joke, but that they are actually very serious contenders for an ass whooping. We are going to play with World War Lost as the base. In case you have not seen the mod before, there is quite a bit to unpack in this mod. A range of new zombie species, then on top of that zombie callers, zombie explosions, spawn mechanisms, where boomers, so-called explosive or booming losts, will call additional losts. So all of that guarantees that there will be a lot of losts. The nice thing about the losts is, even within World War Lost, it puts the fire or the flamer into a category of a hard counter of the Losts. Equally, the lure is a good counter. So, that being said, That all will help us to not completely get overwhelmed and forces us into a bit of weapon variety. To make the things with the loss a little bit more interesting, we're completely removing the lost headshot feature, which means that 8 spawned losts are actually 8 enemies, and unless you can find ways around it, spoiler alert, it is definitely not using grenades to spawn additional losts, you will be in trouble. And now I hear you say, okay, Syken, we had that in the past, but the losts eventually still couldn't put a dent into your armor. How are you going to do that? And I reply, dear viewer, with we are adding Lost Bladestorm. And yes, you heard me correctly. Not only can we not kill the Losts immediately, but they also have the unnecessarily aggravating Bladestorm attack, which makes it completely unfun to fight against them. On top of that, they can spawn more, and on top of that, they will just really overrun us. So specifically in the early parts of the game, this will likely be overkill. I expect that in the later parts of the game, with loss being around 10, 12, 14 hit points and hitting for quite a bit, this adds another challenge. So whenever we're seeing the loss, they are no longer the pushover, but they're actually incredibly intense enemies. So, as a summary, we got new enemies from the Requiem Legion and a better advent. We put in 2 additional rulers, we put in 1 additional faction, and we made the Losts the actually terrifying zombie faction that it is supposed to be. Which brings us to the more immersive parts of this run, the introduction of a few new maps. This here is just an overview of some of the maps that I'm going to include. There are additional parcels, there are fixes for parcels that wouldn't be there beforehand, there are new biomes, such as sandstorm or snow, then there are new just general environments. Lost Neighborhood is one of them. We have overgrown cities, we have forests, we have just a lot of new parcels to make it interesting. All of that will add a bit more variety of the maps that we have played, and it will make it harder for me to not know the optimal spots and how everything works. There are individual standalone maps that I'm going to include as well, some of which are actually quite promising and that I've never seen before. Moving on to a category that I would call quality of life features or generally improvement features. Now that we do have so many enemies that are sometimes unknown even to me, I wanted to include the feature F1, which basically allows us to target an enemy, press F1, and get a full stat block of said enemy with all of its abilities. It's a little bit easier, so that I know which of the enemies I want to target first. Same with the gotcha again portion. I personally don't need it that much because I generally know what considers flanking and what isn't. But I think for the viewer experience, I have been highlighted that it makes it easier from a viewer's perspective to generally understand why can't you go to A, B, and C. And frankly, there are a few situations where it makes targeting of, say, the target objective a tiny bit more easy. We will run a few more mission side trips simply because they are fun, but also because we have more side trips overall. This also increases the chance of the Dark Elder to spawn. Then, let's talk about equipment. I've been pretty unanimously asked to remove repeaters and make them the better repeaters. The better repeaters are essentially adding absolute crit damage, basic, advanced, and superior. Add quite a bit of crit damage, and I appreciate that. Makes the repeater still usable later in the game, but it doesn't make it completely overbearing. And I can also understand that with multi-shot and so on, it is always a bit disheartening if a ruler or a big alien just gets killed in the first shot. Understood, we're fixing that. But now you're asking, does maybe XCOM2 get anything for that? And my answer to it is 2 things. Number 1, I allow the utilization of sidearms in the utility slots. It's not an extra slot. This is just you, instead of a grenade, you can bring a pistol. I did not feel that that was a huge upgrade, and you will see later that that is becoming important. But we're also going to have a specific vest slot, and I made the decision to bring that in because vests are heavily underutilized. It adds a new layer of resource dump where I can create a few more neat vests, and it doesn't really take anything away. And you will see in a second why that is not going to change the baseline too much. So instead of repeaters, we're getting vests, and there is an option to use secondary weapons in utility slots. That's all the changes to XCOM. It's pretty much the same as always. There are a couple more fixes. I'm just going to go through them. Most of these are quality of life features. The base game still has a few known issues that need to be resolved, and I intend to just use these features over and over. Some of them are also just for the viewer to have a bit more of an appreciation of whom are we targeting, how many hit points do they have, what are the stats, etc., etc. And all of that just tries to get the best quality and experience for the viewer as possible. So that concludes the mod portion of the run. Now there is still the sabotage portion. So how does that look like? Good question. So I wanted to clean up a few things from the last ChatGPT session. I think overall ChatGPT was an enrichment, but it had its limitations. The large language model didn't understand the game, therefore all of its intricate suggestions didn't really fit or make any difference. Secondly, it was never clear whether or not the dark event stays around or if there are any mitigations or not. And on top of that, some of the dark events or some of the sabotages were just cumbersome to keep track of. It wasn't that much that I didn't want to adhere to them. It was rather a problem of me not keeping the respective thing in mind. As an example, you cannot use full cover. Is great on paper, it just plays very bad because all of a sudden you have like one tile of full cover and you accidentally use it. So what's the consequence of it? Are you going to lose the entire run? Is this now kind of rule breaking? I didn't like that concept, and I also didn't like the fact that ChatGPT was coming up with idiotic ideas. So therefore, the revamped version of it is a clear separation between permanent events and one-time events. Permanent events are going to happen each month, and they represent a major setback that limits XCOM. Moreover, they are cumulative and almost treated like dark events. Keep in mind, we're already having dark events. We're, of course, going to play with permanent dark events in this run. And these additional sabotages are quite nasty. I tried to color code them, and I'm not going to go through all of them. Overall, we have nearly 35, 40 of them, but I can assure you that none of them are really fun to deal with. So the yellow part is basically destructions of the Avenger, and a reduction of our ability to act on the strategy layer. Whether that is the resistance ring destruction, training center destruction, infirmary, GTS, etc., etc. So it basically lists a whole bunch of buildings that can be destroyed. If said building is destroyed, it would be deconstructed and cannot be rebuilt in the future. Imagine, for instance, if the GTS would be hit with that, all of your improvements in the GTS, including squad size improvements, are gone. So that will be a massive blow if that would happen. Some others are not as dire. Of course, if you build a laboratory and then the laboratory blows up and you can no longer build a laboratory, that will be an impact, but it's not as major as the GTS, for instance. I deliberately left a bit of room in between all of them so that the most severe one and the least severe one still feel like a significant impact. If you lose the resistance ring, and you cannot get rid of the chosen anymore, but you can still do individual missions as per the normal XCOM mechanic, one per month. Then the green portion is a faction breakdown. So I titled it Reaper, Skirmisher, and Templar faction. And what that means is the communication with said faction would completely go cold. No further missions or rewards can be received like it. You cannot hire new heroes of the faction. Treat them as a neutral faction and no longer as an ally. Pretty severe, because all of a sudden you cannot get rid of one of the chosen, and on top of it you cannot gain any benefits. The chosen, however, will continue to pester you, and there is little that you can do about it. The blue ones are all individual class events that can happen. While most of them are crackdowns on a specific class, there's also a rookie feature. So crackdowns on a specific class is essentially class X will no longer be usable. Add when found a kill switch to them. Dismiss all of the operatives of that class, and you cannot use any of the class going forward. Whilst it might not be as problematic for, say, Sparks, although I like Sparks, it can be quite problematic if my good old specialist or ranger is being taken away. That would definitely suck and would make the run much, much more interesting. Then there are a few others like Rookie for Life. Existing rookies have a harder time receiving a promotion, cannot use the GTS. You always need to field at least one rookie, and rookies need to at least be there for 2 missions before they get out of the rookie state. So that would also be an equally hard and harsh punishment, but on a different section. Then we're coming to the red or orange ones, which are all equipment related topics, and likely the hardest here are weapon and armor downgrades. I selected part 1 and part 2, so they are cumulative in nature, and they do exactly what you were expecting to do. If you get weapon downgrade part 1, then it means that all of your weapons are downgraded 1 tier. So if you're not yet at plasma, that means you go back from laser to ballistic, and you kind of need to research plasma to eventually go back up to laser. But if you get weapon downgrade part 2, then so be it. You are stuck with ballistic weapons going forward. Pretty harsh, but also unlikely to happen twice. Therefore, I'm okay with the harshness of it. Same for armor downgrades. Then we do have dried gunpowder. You can no longer use any form of grenade launchers, or heavy weapons. Keep in mind that includes flamers, and that is nasty because all of a sudden the loss that were currently easy will become much more difficult. Then you have things like support failure. You lose 1 support slot item. I did not bring 2 of them because I don't think that would be fun to be completely without support items. Ammunition failure, you can no longer produce new ammunition, and you're limited to 1 ammunition per the entire team. Utility items failure, PCS failure, you get the point. So it really, as permanent events, makes it very, very hard. I was trying to take permanent events that don't need a lot of maintenance. You basically do it once, and then you just have to accept it. They come once a month, so you can expect that if we make it that far, you're going to see between 6 and 8 of these bad boys in play before we can even go to the final mission. So that then brings us to the one-time events, and I'm not going to go through all of them because this is really a long list. If you want, you can read through the list at your leisure, but I'm just going to highlight the top points here. Yellow, again, is anything that has to do with utility items. And that can range from you cannot use a certain utility item, over you need to use less of that item, over to you can only use a certain item and nothing else, towards you need to use consumables, or just a pure randomization. The one-time events, that I should say, that will happen before every mission. So I'm going to roll before every mission what random events are happening. They're immediate in effect, but they have no long-term consequences. They are only affecting the next mission. And I specifically selected stuff that would make it very interesting to then actually work through the mission and problem solve with whatever limitations you have just obtained. So what I will do is I'll first deploy my team as and how I see it fit. Then we're rolling something, then the impact will happen and I need to on the fly adjust, or sometimes I cannot adjust. So the items or the supply items that I just mentioned are one part of it. The blue portion is everything that has to do with weapons, and it could include a specific weapon category that can no longer be used, no assault rifles, and you're not allowed to adjust your team. This is where the secondary slot with the pistols kind of comes into play to not completely eliminate certain operatives. But there are also other things. You can only use pistols, you can only use melee and explosives, you cannot use any attachments, you need to bring at least 50% of the team needs to wear a certain type of weapon, and there are also the always loved reduction to laser weapons and ballistic weapons. So that will be fun. Then all of the green portion is anything that has to do with classes or the team itself. Team size decrease 1, 2, and 3 basically reduce the number of operatives by 1, 2, or 3. Then the other way to look at it is I put army of 4, 3, and 2 in there, which is just a different way of doing it, but might not be as restrictive. Then we have a couple of needing to take rookies with you. Then we have a couple of specific classes that need to be taken with you, such as, example, Mind over Matter, field all of the available psionic forces, Templars, and Psyops, and then fill out the rest of the teams. Or there are things like classes and pairs, where you need to always take 2 of a pair, and you need to round the overall number of operatives to either 2, 4, or 6. So a couple of fun things to just change your team. And then finally, and I was really careful not to overdo it, mainly because I don't want tracking during the actual mission. The red ones are things that happen on the actual mission. I got stunned and stunned 2, which just means you lose 1 or 2 turns. Then there is a fun one, listen to Bradford and do exactly what he says. That might be funny. Then there is no concealment, which basically break concealment right away. And then there is 1, and that's the only thing in the entire flock where I need to do something and remind myself of doing that during the fight, which is called flashbacks. There's a 10% chance for any violent action, shooting, melee, grenades, yada yada yada, that the soldier will suffer a flashback in the next mission. So roll the dice each time, and only the rolling of the dice happens right when they commit to the action. So if I charge in with a Templar, then that will be a problem, because I will roll, and if I fail, then the Templar will basically stand right next to the enemy, not doing anything. There's also no coming out. So that will severely limit the team and make it interesting. Those are the sabotages on the other hand. So if all of that has caught your interest, if all of this has caught your interest, then now is the time to sign up for this run. I am taking active submissions from you guys. I will put you to the character pool, and we're going to have a fun time going live with the run. I am about to start recording the run in the next hours/days, so time is of the essence. You want to be recruited now. Please let me know in the comments below. Did I create something that is interesting? What do you think of Requiem, the last hour? Take care, and hopefully see you within the run.